And Moshe said, Hear, O Yisrael, Yahweh your Elohim, Yahweh is one, and you shall love Yahweh your Elohim with all your heart, with all your being, and with all your might. And these words which I'm commanding you today shall be in your heart, and you shall impress them upon your children, and shall speak of them when you sit in your house and when you walk by the way, when you lie down and when you rise up, and shall bind them as a sign on your hands, and they shall be as frontlets between your eyes, and you shall write them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Shabbat Shalom to everyone worshiping with us at home. It's really nice to be here today, isn't it? Hallelujah. It's a wonderful Sabbath. The name of the message today is called, Did You Catch Any? Did J-E-W, catch any? Did you catch any? All right, so I've been waiting all week for Yahweh to impress upon me what He wanted for me to talk to you folks about today, and something peculiar happened. As I was waking up this morning, I started to realize that I had been dreaming about the two biggest fish that I ever caught in my life. I told you it's peculiar. And see, both of these events were like about 25 years ago and 35 years ago. See, I'm not like Pat. You know, Pat just walks up to a body of water, and these big fish just latch on to whatever he throws out there. You know, and so since that's not something that happens to me all the time, I really don't think about these two events very often. And this morning I was dreaming about both of them back to back. Now, the second one was quite by accident, and I'm going to tell you about that one first. See, once upon a time, we were at a Cub Scouts fish-a-rama, right? So all the boys could get them a fishing activity badge, and we were out at this gentleman's lake. I decided after that I'd never do that again. I was a Cub master, and the rule was no running. Okay, the rule was broken all day long. All right, but anyway, so I had gotten Joey. You see, Joey's 35 now, so you know he was a little fella. He was 8, I think, maybe 7, 8, and I'd gotten him a new fishing rig. All right, so I'm sitting there and I'm getting a jelly worm on it, and I get it baited up and everything, and one of the things that we men have to do when we fix a kid's fishing pole up is we've got to cast it one time and make sure everything's working just right. All right, so I got him fixed up, and he's standing there and everything, and I throw this thing over in some cattails and click it, and I've been over doing something. I don't remember what I was getting, but I was getting ready to roll it back in. And all of a sudden, that fishing pole goes wham, 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 wham. So I start working in. Well, when I finally got in, it was about a 5-pounder. Yeah, and I'm like, this is great. Now, I was really, really excited about this, you know. Joey found himself unable to rejoice with me in this unmerited favor because he became quite upset that I stole his fish. I stole his fish, and for years, y'all, that was remembered as the day that Dad stole my fish. He still talks about the day that Dad stole his fish. But it's mostly tongue in cheek now. Mostly tongue in cheek. But I'm telling you, this was complete accident. I just threw it over there, wasn't even paying attention. Well, I mean, the fish hooked itself, just about, you know. Well, you might be thinking that this message is about a need for forgiveness. But it's not. It's not. The other time that I was fishing and I caught the biggest fish that I ever caught was at a small lake in the summertime near our house, and I was with Debbie's uncle Eddie. We used to fish a lot together, and we were out there and everything, and Eddie and I, we'd separate, and work different parts of the lake. And I was down the bank from him a little bit, and I heard him up there going, Stanley, come here and look at this fish. And I started easing down there, and there was this big old female on the bed, and I was sitting there watching it, and he had a rig set up just about like the one I made for Joey. All right? And he'd throw it out there, and he'd pull it by, and that fish, she'd turn, and she'd look at it, and then she'd turn back around. Some little fish would come up in the bed, and she'd run them off. All right? And he'd throw it out there, and he'd pull it back by, and she'd turn, and she'd look at it. She'd turn back around. Well, I'd been watching Bill dance on his fishing show, and he was fishing for largemouth bass in the summertime when they won't bite, and he was out there in these bushes on his boat, and he took his weight and he slid it right down next to the jelly worm. See, we got a jelly worm again, and used it like a jig. And what a jig is, it's set up where you can just sit there and jig it up and down in the water. I said, Eddie, do you mind if I try something? He said, no, I'd rather you catch it than nobody. So I took that old jelly worm, that weight, and slid it down next to that jelly worm. I got way out there where it couldn't see me, and I went jig, 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 and she turned around and she opened that big old mouth up and she sucked that jelly worm in, and she started swimming off. And I got that fish, all right? I got that fish, and those were the two biggest fish that I ever caught. And I was telling Debbie about that this morning, and Debbie said that she couldn't help but notice, but that in both of them, that it was where I was getting somebody else's fish. But one was with permission. Yeah, Eddie said, and Joey's I just stole. All right, now, I told her, I said, that is not what this is about. It is not what it's about. All right, turn with me to Matthew chapter 4. Because you see, Yahweh has been putting something on me to talk about this week, but it just wasn't coming to fruition. And then all of a sudden, this happened. Matthew chapter 4. We're going to start reading in verse 18. And Yahshua, walking by the Sea of Galilee, saw two brothers, Shimon and Kepha, that's Simon and Peter, and Andre, his brother, casting a net into the sea, for they were fishermen. And he said to them, follow me, and I shall make you fishers of men. And immediately they left their nets and followed him, and going on from there, he saw two brothers, Jacob, the son of Zabdi, and Yochanan, his brother, in the boat with Zabdi, their father, mending their nets. And he called them, and immediately they left the boat and their father and followed him. And Yahshua went about all Galilee, that's Galilee, teaching in their congregations and proclaiming the good news of the reign and healing every disease and every bodily weakness among the people. All right? There's two things. One is that we're supposed to be fishers of men. Okay? The other is that Yahweh is no respecter of persons, but not everyone is going to respond the same to everything. Okay? We're all familiar with Peter's dream, right? And that Yahweh revealed to him that he was to call no man unclean. Right? Well, he was using unclean animals to show him that. Right? But Peter was shown that he was not to call any man unclean. But this is not anything that's new in the Scripture. It was something that needed to be reinstructed, but it's not something new. Let's look at Isaiah chapter 56. YHWH chapter 56. We're going to start reading in verse 1. Isaiah 56, verse 1. I told you during the Torah study y'all were trying to preach my sermon. Remember that? Thus said Yahweh, guard right ruling and do righteousness, for near is my deliverance to come. That would be the good news, wouldn't it? And my righteousness to be revealed. Blessed is the man who does this, and the Son of Man who lays hold on it, guarding the Sabbath, lest he profane it, and guarding his hand from doing any evil. Does that say blessed is the Israelite or the Jew? It just says the man, right? Verse 3, and let not the son of the foreigner who has joined himself to Yahweh speak, saying, Yahweh has certainly separated me from his people. Nor let the eunuch say, look, I'm a dry tree. For thus said Yahweh, to the eunuchs who guard my Sabbaths and have chosen what pleases me and hold fast to my covenant, to them I shall give in my house and within my walls a place and a name better than that of sons and daughters. I give them an everlasting name that is not cut off. Also, the sons of the foreigner who join themselves to Yahweh, do you see that? The sons of the foreigner who join themselves to Yahweh, to serve him and to love the name of Yahweh, to be his servants, all who guard the Sabbath and not profane it and hold fast to my covenant, them I shall bring to my set-apart mountain and let them rejoice in my house of prayer. Their burnt offerings and their slaughterings are accepted on my altar. For my house is called a house of prayer for the Israelites, all the people. The Master Yahweh who gathers the outcasts of Yisrael declares, I gather still others to him besides those who are gathered to him. All right? So we see here that foreigners can join themselves to Yahweh by guarding the Shabbat and holding fast to his covenant, just like the Israelites. All right? And this definitely shows that the foreigner is expected to keep the commands. All right? But there does seem to be a time and a place for everything. You see, the first time YHWH sends his taught ones out, where they're supposed to go and proclaim the good news, they were given specific instructions to not go into the ways of the Gentiles and send only to Yisrael. Let's look at Matthew chapter 10. Joey, I just got through telling the story about stealing your fish. That's not what the message is about. We've already gone over that. It's not about forgiveness. Matthew chapter 10, verse 1. And having called his 12 taught ones near, he gave them authority over unclean spirits, to cast them out, and to heal every disease and every bodily weakness. And these are the names of the 12 emissaries. First is Shimon, who is called Kepha, and Andre his brother, and Yaakov the son of Zabdai, and Yochanan his brother, and Philip, and Bartholomew, Tahoma, and Mattathiah the tax collector, Yaakov the son of Alphai, and Labai, whose last name was Tadai, Shimon the Canaanite, and Yehuda from Kerioth, who did also deliver him up. YHWH sent these 12 out, having commanded them, saying, do not go into the way of the Gentiles, and do not enter a city of the Shomeronites, but rather go to the lost sheep of the house of Yisrael. Okay? But later, as we will see, there was an expansion of the mission of the taught ones proclaiming the good news to Yisrael. But even YHWH himself conducted things in much the same way as he did his 12 here, as he was sent to Yisrael. Look at Matthew 15, verse 21. And YHWH went out from there and withdrew to the parts of Zor and Zidon, and see a woman of Canaan, that's not an Israelite, came from those borders and cried out to him, saying, have compassion on me, O Master, son of David. My daughter is badly demon-possessed. But he did not answer her a word. And his taught ones came and asked him, saying, Send her away, because she cries after us. And he answering said, I was not sent except to the lost sheep of the house of Yisrael. But she came and was bowing to him, saying, Master, help me. And he answering said, It is not good to take the children's bread and throw it to the little dogs. But she said, Yea, Master, for even the little dogs eat the crumbs which fall from the master's table. And YHWH answering said to her, O woman, your belief is great. Let it be to you as you desire. And her daughter was healed from that hour. But this is not the first time that YHWH ever blesses a Gentile because of their belief. All right? Look in Matthew chapter 8. Matthew chapter 8 on page 924 of the 98 ISR. It's the first time I said that today. Verse 5. And when YHWH had entered Capernaum, a captain came to him, appealing to him. Now, this word translated captain means a Roman officer. As a matter of fact, in the Aramaic, it actually reveals it's a centurion. Okay? All right. A captain came to him, appealing to him, saying, Master, my servant is lying in the house, paralyzed, grievously tortured. And YHWH said to him, I shall come and heal him. And the captain answering said, Master, I'm not worthy that you should come under my roof, but only say a word, and my servant shall be healed. For I too am a man under authority, having soldiers under me, and I say to this one, Go, and he goes, and to another, Come, and he comes, and to my servant, Do this, and he does it. And when YHWH heard this, he marveled. And he said to those who followed, Truly I say to you, not even in Israel have I found such great belief. And I say to you that many shall come from the east and the west and sit down with Abraham and Yitzhak and Jacob in the reign of the heavens. But the sons of the reign shall be cast out into outer darkness. There shall be weeping and gnashing of teeth. And YHWH said to the captain, Go, and as you have believed, so let it be done for you. And his servant was healed that hour. All right? Now, having said that, though, we see that part of the last thing that YHWH commanded his taught ones was to go and fish for men, so to speak, among all the Gentiles, and to teach them all that he had taught them among the lost sheep of the house of Israel. Think about that way. Okay? Look at Matthew 28. Verse 16. Page 954. And the 11 taught ones went away into Galilee. Isn't that interesting? That's where they were when all this started. To the mountain which YHWH had appointed for them. And when they saw him, they bowed to him, but some doubted. And YHWH came up and spoke to them, saying, All authority has been given to me in the heaven and on earth. Therefore go and, look at this, make taught ones of all the nations. Goyim. All the people that are not Israel. All right? Therefore go and make taught ones of all the nations, immersing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the set-apart Spirit, teaching them to guard all that I have commanded you. And see, I am with you always until the end of the age. Amen. All right. See, he's sending them to fish for men in their ponds. You know, doesn't matter which pond they're in. He's sending them there. And he's already, and he's going to declare to Peter that they're all clean fish. Amen. They're all clean fish. But why were they sent first only to the lost sheep of the house of Israel? Well, that's because Yisrael are the covenant people, and they had to be established first. All right? But Paul addresses this several times, and there's too many instances to go through all of these because time just won't permit it. Let's look at Romans chapter 2. Romans chapter 2. I'm going to start reading in verse 1. I may just read this whole chapter. And the reason I call this message, Did You Catch Any?, is because the Yehudim were the ones that were supposed to be going out and be fishers of men. Romans 2:1. Therefore, O man, you are without excuse. Everyone who judges, for in which you judge another, you condemn yourself, since you who judge practice the same wrongs. And we know that the judgment of Elohim is according to truth against those who practice such wrongs. And do you think, O man, you who judge those practicing such wrongs and doing the same, that you shall escape the judgment of Elohim? Or do you despise the riches of His kindness and tolerance and patience, not knowing that the kindness of Elohim leads you to repentance? But according to your hardness and your unrepentant heart, you are treasuring up for yourself wrath in the day of wrath and revelation of the righteous judgment of Elohim, who shall render to each one according to his works. Oh, I wish you hadn't said that. Look at here. Everlasting life to those, I'm just saying that tongue in cheek. All right. Everlasting life to those who, by persistence in good work, seek for esteem and respect and incorruptibility. Do you know what that means, incorruptibility, eventually? It means putting on incorruption. But wrath, verse 8, and displeasure to those who are self-seeking, and do not obey the truth, but obey unrighteousness. Affliction and distress on every human being working what is evil, of the Yehudit first, and also to the Greek, or the Aramean, as it says in the Aramaic. But esteem, respect, and peace to everyone working what is good, to the Yehudit first, and also to the Greek, for there is no partiality with Elohim. What did it say in Isaiah 56? For the sons of the foreigner who join themselves to Yahweh, who guard His Sabbath, and to keep His covenant. For as many as sinned, verse 12, without Torah, what does Torah mean? Instruction. Okay, without instruction shall also perish without Torah or instruction. As many sinned in the Torah, the instruction, shall be judged by that instruction, that Torah. For not the hearers of the Torah are righteous in the sight of Elohim, but the doers of the law shall be declared right. Paul's saying a lot of stuff right here that goes against mainstream, doesn't he? All right. For when Gentiles who do not have the Torah by nature do what is in the Torah, although not having the Torah or the instruction, they are a Torah to themselves, who show the work of the Torah written in their hearts, their conscience also bearing witness, and being themselves their thoughts accusing or even excusing. In the day when Elohim shall judge the secrets of men through Yahshua Messiah according to my good news. See, you are called a Yehudit, a Jew, and rest on the Torah, and make yourself a boast in Elohim, and know the desire of Elohim, and approve what is superior, being instructed out of the Torah. And are trusting that you yourselves are a guide to the blind, a light to those who are in the darkness, an instructor of foolish ones, a teacher of babes, having the form of knowledge and the truth in the Torah. You then who teach another, do you not teach yourself? You who proclaim that a man should not steal, do you steal? You who say, do not commit adultery, do you commit adultery? You who abominate idols, do you rob temples? You who make your boast in the Torah, through the transgression of the Torah, do you disrespect Elohim? Now that's pretty strong right there. All right? For the name of Elohim is blasphemed among the Gentiles because of you, as it has been written. For circumcision indeed profits if you practice the Torah. Does this say don't be circumcised? Nope. It says circumcision indeed profits if you practice the Torah, but if you are a transgressor of the Torah, the instruction from Yahweh, your circumcision has become uncircumcision. That's one of the reasons why I say you can't have a circumcised heart and wander after the ways of the uncircumcised. You just can't do it. So, if an uncircumcised one watches over the righteousness of the Torah, and I'm sure that what he's referring to here, because there's some things that the uncircumcised can't do. They can't keep Passover. I think what Paul's talking about here is to have that love of the neighbor as themselves in their heart. To have the love of Elohim in their heart, first and foremost, that even though they don't know all the instructions, all right? If an uncircumcised one watches over the righteousness of the Torah, the weightier matters, shall not his uncircumcision be reckoned as circumcision? And the uncircumcised by nature who perfects the Torah shall judge you, who notwithstanding letter and circumcision are a transgressor of the Torah. For he is not a Yehudit or a Jew who is so outwardly, neither is circumcision that which is outward in the flesh, but a Yehudit is he who is so inwardly, and circumcision is that of the heart and spirit, not literally, whose praise is not from men, but from Elohim. Do you not remember that Yahweh says that there's one Torah for the foreigner and for the native born, and that if the, well, we'll read some of that in a minute, but the foreigner will be reckoned as a native born. All right. Romans 10. Verse 1. Because the Scripture says, whoever puts his trust in him shall not be put to shame, because there's no distinction between Yehudit and Greek. For the Master of all is rich to all those calling upon him. For everyone who calls on the name of Yahweh shall be saved. Okay? There's another place where Paul's... Romans... I beg your pardon. I'm so sorry. I said Romans 10, 1. There's two ones. It's 11. Sorry. I can't even blame it on dyslexia. I just... maybe it's blindness. Because the Scripture says, whoever puts his trust in him shall not be put to shame. Verse 12, because there is no distinction between Yehudit and Greek. For the same Master of all is rich to all those calling upon him. For everyone who calls on the name of Yahweh shall be saved. Okay. Paul's reiterating here what Peter has said, that there's not distinction, that we're not supposed to call any man unclean. And we're going to get to something important here in a minute. Now, one more thing, just where Paul mentions this again. Galatians 3. Galatians 3. Going to be on page 1129. Verse 23. But before belief came, we were being guarded under Torah. And I'm going to tell you something. Paul's not talking about simply holding an opinion that Yahshua is who he said he was. That's the way the mainstream wants you to think that belief is primarily about. You just got to have the right opinion and you'll be saved. Am I right? I mean, when you get, in the elementary, when you get down to the, elementary parts of it, that's pretty much it, But that's not what Paul's talking about. But before belief came, we were being guarded under Torah, having been shut up for the belief being about to be revealed. Therefore, the Torah became our trainer until Messiah. Is that what yours says? Yours say until Messiah? It says unto. Now, they want to read it like it says until. But it says, therefore, the Torah became our trainer unto Messiah in order to be declared right by belief. Now, listen, don't forget this. When you got... this isn't going to be a Christian bashing message, but when you have Christians telling you, when they quote this right here, what you say next is, well, let me ask you this question, these two questions. How long were you under the Torah, and what did you learn while under its tutelage? Okay? Because that just said that the Torah became our trainer unto or to be like Messiah. Okay? And if they say, well, I had never been under the Torah, well, then this verse don't apply to you. It just don't apply to you. So why don't you leave that in the Scripture and quote something else? Okay? And after belief has come, we are no longer under a trainer. Now, do you understand why that is? That's because when we're under a teacher, we're a disciple. All right? And what's the job of the teacher? The teacher is to make the disciple like the teacher, not to raise the disciple up where he has a completely different philosophy. It's to make him like the teacher. If you've got, I like to use this as an example. When you got a learner's permit to get your driver's license, you've got a book there, the instructions, the Torah from the Department of Motor Vehicles, all right? And your job is to learn how to go by that book, all right? Now, once you learn how to go by that book and you get your driver's license, you still have to go by what the instruction says. Just because, because you've got to be like the trainer. Not, you can't drive 70 miles an hour through the school zone without consequences. All right? And after belief has come, verse 25, we are no longer under the trainer, for you are all sons of Elohim through belief in Messiah Yahshua. For as many of you as were immersed into Messiah have put on Messiah. There is not Yehudit nor Greek. There's not slave nor free. There is not male and female, for you are all one in Messiah Yahshua. And if you are of Messiah, then you are seed of Abraham and heirs according to the promise. Let me say this too about this. Paul is not saying that there's no such thing as a Jew or a Greek. He's not saying that there's no such thing as a slave nor a free. He's not saying there's no such thing as a male or a female. And the Torah tells us that there are certain things that each of these can do and can't do. There's Torah that goes along with slaves and masters. Right? Paul is saying, in the sight of Yahweh, you are all one in Messiah Yahshua. We've still got to live like we were created to live. But it's not about doing away with anything. All right. Now, look at what the taught ones had to say about this very thing. You know those guys who were giving orders to teach all the nations everything that Yahshua had taught them? Those guys? Acts 15. We're going to start reading verse 5. I'm looking at this very closely and it says 5. Acts 15, verse 5. And some of the believers who belonged to the sect of the Pharisees rose up, saying, it is necessary to circumcise them and to command them to keep the Torah of Moshe. This is talking about the Gentiles. All right, that's what this is talking about. Do you see what the first thing we read here is? It's about a sect of the Pharisees called the circumcision that was saying that it was necessary to circumcise right off the bat. All right. And the emissaries, verse 6, and the elders came together and looked into this matter. And when there had been much dispute, Kepha, that's Peter, rose up and said to them, men, brothers, you know that a good while ago Elohim chose among us that by my mouth the Gentiles should hear the word of the good news and believe. And Elohim, who knows the heart, bore witness to them by giving them the set-apart spirit as also us, and made no distinction between us and them, cleansing their hearts by belief. Now then, why do you try Elohim by putting a yoke on the neck of the taught ones, which neither our fathers nor we were able to bear? All right? And we've addressed that in another message. But through the favor of the Master Yahshua Messiah, we trust to be saved in the same way as they. And all the crowd was silent and were listening to Barnabas and Shaul declaring how many miracles and wonders Elohim did among the Gentiles through them. And after they were silent, Yaakov, that would be James, answered saying, men, brothers, listen to me. Shimon, that'd be Simon Peter, has declared how Elohim first visited the Gentiles to take out of them a people for his, what's that next word? Name. And the word of the prophets agree with this, as it has been written, after this I shall return and rebuild the booth of David, which has fallen down, and I shall rebuild its ruins, and I shall set it up, so that the remnant of mankind shall seek Yahweh. It didn't say the remnant of the Jews. The remnant of mankind shall seek Yahweh, even all the Gentiles on whom my name has been called, says Yahweh, who is doing all this, who has made this known from of old. Therefore I judge that we should not trouble those from among the Gentiles who are turning to Elohim. Hey, that sort of sounds like those folks in Isaiah 56, doesn't it? All right? But that we write to them, and remember what we started reading with, there's people trying to force them to be circumcised. That's what this is about. But that we write to them to abstain from the defilements of idols, and from whoring, and from what is strangled, and from blood. For from ancient generations Moshe has in every city those proclaiming him, being read in the congregation every Sabbath. Yeah, that sort of sounds a lot like those folks in Isaiah 56, doesn't it? Okay, now here's the thing. These guys, they are not writing here that this is all that the Gentiles who are turning to Elohim have to do forever and ever, amen. Okay, that's not what this is about. What this is about is an answer to these folks that we just read about, the Pharisees who are in the sect of the circumcision that says this is necessary. All right. Yahshua's taught ones are saying, no, that's not what you do first. What you do is you abstain from defilements of idols and whoring and from things strangled and from blood, which all comes out of the Torah, right? All of those things come from the Torah. Guess where the definitions for sexual immorality come from? Out of the Torah. If you want to know what they're talking about, here you go look in the Torah, and then you'll know what they mean here, okay? They're not talking about this is all you got to do, because look what the next thing they say is, for Moshe is taught in the synagogue in every city, every Sabbath. That's not just put in there for incidental. That's because they expected them to go and learn. And guess what? When they learn enough, they'll get circumcised. Because they're taught that command. That's right. All right. But again, this is not something new. Exodus chapter 12. See, now we're going to go back here and we're going to find out that all this stuff is not just New Testament stuff that's doing away with something. Shemot chapter 12. We'll be reading all this here before long. We're going to start reading verse 43, page 70. And Yahweh said to Moshe and Aharon, this is the law of the Passover. No stranger is to eat of it. But any servant, a man who has bought for silver, when you have circumcised him, then let him eat of it. A sojourner and a hired servant does not eat of it. It is eaten in one house. You are not to take any of the flesh outside the house, nor are you to break any bone of it. All the congregation of Israel are to perform it, and when a stranger sojourns with you, and shall perform the Passover to Yahweh. Thought it said no strangers. Oh wait, there's more. Let all his male be circumcised, and then let him come near and perform it, and he shall be as a native of the land. But let no uncircumcised eat of it. There is one Torah for the native born and for the stranger who sojourns among you. There's neither Jew nor Gentile. Oh yes, there's a distinction being made between sojourner and native born, but they are to be regarded as native born, for there is one Torah. And all the children of Israel did as Yahweh commanded Moshe. All right, well, let's look at Numbers 15. Bimidbar 15, verse 14. Page 157 in the 98 ISR. Verse 14. And when a stranger sojourns with you, or whoever is among you throughout your generations, and would make an offering made by fire, a sweet fragrance to Yahweh, what's he doing that for? As you do, so he does. Isn't that interesting? One law is for you of the assembly, and for the stranger who sojourns with you, a law forever throughout your generations. As you are, so this is the stranger before Yahweh. One Torah and one right ruling for you and the stranger who sojourns with you. All right, now skip down to verse 28. All right, and here's another one. And the priest shall make atonement for the being who strays by mistake when he sins by mistake before Yahweh to make atonement for him, and it shall be forgiven him. For him who does whatever by mistake, there is one Torah, both for him who is a native among the children of Israel, and for the stranger who sojourns in their midst. But the being who does whatever defiantly, whether he is native or stranger, he reviles Yahweh, and that being shall be cut off from among his people, because he has despised the word of Yahweh and has broken his command. That being shall certainly be cut off. His crookedness is upon him. Okay? So it sounds like Yahweh's pretty consistent with people, doesn't it? And it doesn't seem like this New Testament idea is a New Testament idea. All right? Well, one more. Second Chronicles chapter 6. This is when Shlomo is dedicating the set-apart place that he's built. And 2 Chronicles 6, we're going to be on page, we're going to be on verse 32, page 880, 881. Everybody there? It says, Divrei ha-Yamim in the ISR, 2 Chronicles. All right? Verse 32. Look at the first four words. Also concerning a foreigner. Look at the next words. Who is not of your people, Yisrael, but who comes from a far land for the sake of your great name. Do you see that? For the sake of your great name and your strong hand and your outstretched arm, when they come and pray in this house, then hear from the heavens your dwelling place, and do according all which the foreigner calls to you for, so that all the people of the earth know your name and fear you, as do your people Yisrael, and to know that this house which I have built is called by your name. All right. So we see that Yahweh is an Elohim to all people. Everybody good with that? But just because we're fishing, remember we're fishers of men, just because we're fishing among these, it doesn't mean that they're always going to be biting, and not all of them are keepers. just saying. Matthew 13. Matthew 13. Even when Yahshua is fishing. How about that? Even when Yahshua is fishing. Only he's using different imagery here. Matthew 13, verse 3. And he spoke to them much in parables, saying, See, the sower went out to sow. And as he sowed, some indeed fell by the wayside, and the birds came and devoured them, and others fell on rocky places where they did not have much soil. And immediately they sprang up because they had no depth of soil. But when the sun was up, they were scorched. And because they had no root, they withered. And others fell among thorns, and the thorns came up and choked them. And others fell on good soil and yielded a crop, some 100, some 60, and some 30. He who has ears to hear, let him hear. And the taught ones came to him, saying, Why do you speak to them in parables? And he answering said to them, Because it has been given to you to know the secrets of the reign of the heavens, but to them it has not been given. For whoever possesses, to him more shall be given, and he shall have overflowingly. But whoever does not possess even what he possesses shall be taken away from him. Because of this I speak to them in parables, because seeing they do not see, and hearing they do not hear, nor do they understand. And in them the prophecy of YHWH, that's Isaiah, is completely filled, which says, hearing you shall hear, and by no means understand, and seeing you shall see, and by no means perceive. For the heart of this people has become thickened, and their ears are hard of hearing, and their eyes have closed, lest they should see with their eyes, and hear with their ears, lest they should understand with their heart, and turn back, and I heal them. And blessed are your eyes, because they see, and your ears, because they hear. For truly I say to you, many prophets and righteous ones long to see what you see, and did not see it, and to hear what you hear, and did not hear it. You then, hear the parable of the sower. When anyone hears the word of the rain, and does not understand it, then the wicked one comes and snatches away what was sown in his heart. This is that sown by the wayside. Right? And that sown on rocky places, this is he who hears the word and immediately receives it with joy. Yet he has no root in himself, but is short-lived, and when pressure and persecution arrives because of the word, immediately he stumbles. And that sown among the thorns is he who hears the word, and the worry of this age and the deceit of riches choke the word, and it becomes fruitless. And that sown on good soil is he who hears the word and understands it, and who immediately bears fruit and yields, some 100-fold, some 60, and some 30. So don't be too overwhelmed if you're getting out there and you're in this example, scattering seed. Others would be fishing, and there's you're not getting any bites. Every once in a while you get a keeper, right? Well, skip down to verse 47. This will get us some fishing. Again, the rain of the heavens is like a dragnet that was thrown into the sea and gathered some of every kind, which when it was filled, they drew it to shore. And they sat down and gathered the good into containers, but threw the rotten away. And thus shall it be at the end of the age. The messengers shall come forth and separate the wicked out of the midst of the righteous, and shall throw them into the furnace of fire. There shall be wailing and gnashing of teeth. Now, that tells us right there that not all of them are keepers. You know? And Yahshua said not to cast our pearls before swine. All right? But when you're out there fishing for men, sometimes it's hard to tell whether it's a pig-nosed fish or what it is. All right? So we have to get out there and do like Yahshua and just spread the word as much as we can. But you remember one of the things that Yahshua was condemned for? He was condemned for eating with sinners. All right? Now, was he eating with people who were continuing in active sinning, or was he eating with people who the Pharisees perceived as not being as righteous as they were, and had turned from their unrighteousness, but since they had blemishes, they weren't, the creme de la creme anymore, right? What did Yahshua say? He said, whores and tax collectors are getting into the reign before you, all right? Not actively practicing whores and tax collectors, but people who were and had repented and turned, all right? And what we're going to read next, I think that this is Paul talking about doing some of the same thing. 1 Corinthians chapter 9, Paul is talking about meeting people where they are, okay? Meeting them in a way that they can be reached, all right? Now, some people are going to take this to say that Paul's wishy-washy and he just does whatever he does, but you watch and see what I'm talking about here. 1 Corinthians 9, verse 18. What then is my reward? That in bringing the good news, I should offer the good news of Messiah without cost, so as not to abuse my authority in the good news. For though I am free from all, I made myself a servant to all in order to, what are those next two words? Win more. And to the Yehudim, I became as a Yehudite, that I might win Yehudim. All right? Well, he is a Jew. All right? But look what it says next. To those who are under the Torah, as under the Torah, so as to win those who are under the Torah. To those without the Torah, as without Torah. Not being without Torah toward Elohim, but under Torah of Messiah, so as to win those who are without the Torah. You see, we can't go to talk. It's kind of hard to go and talk to some people about the Torah when they believe that they're not under the Torah. You have to take a different approach. All right? You can talk to somebody who knows that they're supposed to keep the Torah and say, brother, sister, you're falling out from where you're supposed to be. All right? And they can hear that. People who have misinterpreted have been taught the twisted words of Paul have a hard time, and we have to meet them where they are and appeal to the Spirit to work on them. Nevertheless, verse 21, to those without Torah as without Torah, not being without Torah toward Elohim, you see what Paul's saying there? Not being without, but under Torah of Messiah, so as to win those who are without a Torah. To the weak, I became as weak, so as to win the weak. To all men I have become all, so as to save some by all means. And I do this because of the good news, so as to become a fellow partaker with it. Paul's not saying that you don't have to become, if they don't have the Torah, to become Torahless. That's not what he's saying. He is saying meet them where they are. Now, sometimes we catch fish because we present the bait in a way that others have not presented it, in a way that appeals to them. The bait. Not debate, but the bait. Okay? All right? That's what happened with Debbie's uncle. You see? And this is what I think Paul is alluding to here. See, the fish was not responding to Eddie's jelly worm, even though he kept on presenting it, and even though he was using the same lure that I was using. But when I presented it another way, that same fish just opened that big old mouth and took it right in and just devoured it. Sometimes we catch men for the reign of Elohim because we present it to them in a way that appeals to their understanding. Okay? Sometimes we catch fish that we didn't really know were there, like Joey's. And so, the day that I stole his fish. Yeah. All right. And sometimes we catch men for the reign of Elohim that we didn't know were there too. And that's why we need to be walking the walk all the time. Because you never know who's watching. You really never know who's watching. And though she was playing, Debbie might be right about catching somebody else's fish. Just pointed out that I'll tell you later. But she might be right about catching somebody else's fish because we're supposed to be catching somebody else's fish. Me, Mom. We're supposed to be catching Yahweh's fish for Him. Right? All right? No matter what pond they're in. No matter what pond they're in. If we're out there trying to catch trophies for our own wall, you hear that? If we're out there trying to catch trophies for our own wall, we fail the reign of Elohim. We're supposed to be catching fish for Yahweh. And this is what I want to hear at the end of the fishing trip. Okay? Everybody turn with me to Matthew 25. I'm going to read one verse, so I'm not going to tell you where it is yet. Matthew 25. Everybody there? Flip over one page, I think. Verse 21. And his master said to him, "Well done, good and trustworthy servant. You are trustworthy over a little. I shall set you over much. Enter into the joy of your master." All right? At the end of the age, how will you answer when you're asked, did you catch any? Yevrakeka Yahweh ba'ishmareka ya'er Yahweh panavaleka v'kuneka yasa Yahweh panavaleka v'yasem lakash shalom. Yahweh bless you and guard you. Yahweh make his face to shine upon you and show favor to you. Yahweh lift up his face upon you and give you his complete contentment.